we very well might be calibrating the BMS a little bit. There it goes, right there. Switched over at. So interesting result, as you can see, from the NX plug-in hybrid. And I'm very curious to compare that to how the RX plug-in hybrid did, because I feel like that number very well might be identical to the RX. Hey everyone, welcome back to another range test video here on the channel. This time I'm in the 2025 Lexus NX 450h plug-in hybrid. And if you saw my other walk around video on this particular vehicle, you'll know this is somewhat of a sentimental vehicle to me, because this was my very first press vehicle back in later 2023 calendar year. And that was the standard hybrid finished in the beautiful orange exterior. And I absolutely love the NX, and it was a very cool first experience, at least for a press car, in my opinion. Now here we are about a year and a half later, and I'm in the plug-in hybrid iteration, which uses very similar componentry for the hybrid architecture, just obviously has a larger, more powerful high voltage battery system, maybe some small tweaks to the electric motors, things like that, but it still has the 2.5 liter naturally aspirated 4-cylinder underneath the hood. And today we're going to find out exactly how far we can go on a single charge, only using the electrified powertrain, none of the gasoline internal combustion engine. And just a few specs, I guess, to run down. This vehicle has an 18.1 kilowatt hour battery pack, about 14.5 to 15 kilowatt hours usable, at least from what I was able to put in on a level 2 charger in this particular vehicle. Not exactly sure if that's the exact specs on paper, but it does have the reserve for the standard hybrid operation. So that would make sense if there's about 3 to 4 kilowatt hours of the reserve, just to make sure the standard hybrid, after you run out of charge, operates seamlessly. The total system output is 304 horsepower from the gas engine and the 2 electric motors that provide propulsion in this vehicle. There's a third electric motor, or a motor generator type deal, that actually helps recharge the high voltage battery and makes the stop-start system for the engine a little bit more seamless. But one thing that's interesting about this vehicle is I've actually not seen anywhere close to the 37 miles on the digital gauge cluster that this vehicle is rated at on the window sticker. So as we left the house, it was saying 32 miles of all electric range. Now that does take into account a little bit of the past efficiency, which hasn't been absolutely amazing. It's saying 1.7 miles per kilowatt hour right now as of me driving. And some of that actually might have to do with the fact that this vehicle is optioned with the crossbars mounted on the roof rails, which I can see directly above me, and that surely does have an impact on the aero efficiency or the aerodynamics. Not that this is a particularly aerodynamic vehicle in general, but everything helps, especially with a plug-in hybrid like this one that's already lugging around about 400 extra pounds, believe it or not, than that of the standard NX gas models. So that's an equivalent to like 2 full-size adults, extra, just because of the battery capacity and things like that. But I am very curious to see, what we are able to achieve in all electric range. So I got the trip information reset. We're already just over 2 miles into the journey today. And yeah, just excited to basically see how this vehicle does in real world driving. If you haven't seen any of my other plug-in hybrid range test videos, make sure you guys check those out here on the channel. I have done the RX, which is the model or size above this in terms of overall, model trim lineup, if you will, within the Lexus SUV family. It very well might share the same exact high voltage battery pack as this vehicle that I'm in right now. I'm not exactly 100% sure on that. But I know it does share a very similar 2.5 liter naturally aspirated 4-cylinder and electric motor setup, things like that. So make sure you guys check those videos out if you guys are curious. But in terms of my route that I take every single vehicle on, including this one today, it's going to be a very good combination of 45, 50 mile an hour speed limits, which we're driving right now. About 40% is that. Then we have a good chunk of the test is going to be 70 to 75 mile an hour interstate speeds. That's about 30 to 40% as well. And then the rest of the test is going to be lower speeds, kind of around that 30, 40 mile an hour. There's even sections that are less than that, 10 to 15 miles an hour on residential streets. So it's a very good mix, and I think in real world conditions, it gives us a good idea of what to expect from one of these vehicles, whether you're running errands in your local town, just putting around the city, or maybe have a more suburban commute like I'm driving today on this particular route. I think it will give us a very good idea. And again, it is consistent on every single vehicle I test here on the channel. Now, in terms of ambient conditions outside, I did have this vehicle plugged in overnight on a 120 volt outlet. It takes about 3 hours to charge from its minimum capacity on the high voltage all the way up to full on a compatible about 7 kilowatt hour or 7 kilowatt level 2 charger. Now, obviously on 120, it's going to be a little bit slower than that, but overnight in most situations, not a problem on 120. But it does have battery preconditioning on the infotainment system. You can turn on and off to both cool and heat the battery. So I'm assuming the battery was a little bit warmed up from that functionality because it was plugged in overnight, but I can't say for certain. But in terms of ambient conditions today, it's a very nice, beautiful kind of coming out of winter day. 45 degrees currently ambient condition. Slight wind outside, not exactly calm, but also not super breezy. So I'm hoping everything will go pretty positively with today's test, and we will see close to that 37 miles of estimated range on the window sticker from this particular vehicle. So everything is looking pretty good so far. We're just over 4.5 miles, about to merge onto the interstate here, and we've only lost 4 miles on the estimated range here on the dash. So we're a little bit ahead of it, but still, I think it'll be interesting to see if we can get close to that 37 number, given I have not seen it and I've charged it up at least 3 times fully this week, read on the actual dashboard. So I'll go ahead and catch up with you guys here in a minute. I'll give you an idea of how the acceleration is here merging onto the interstate, because I am very impressed and happy with this powertrain. It's a very similar one, if not identical one, as found in the RAV4 Prime plug-in hybrid. So giving it a little bit of power here. I don't want to use too much of the battery, but we had to merge in front of that car. I mean, honestly, it's not bad. It's extremely, totally usable to merge on to the interstate on any reasonable size on-ramp, to pass people, everything like that. But I want to get up to about 70 miles an hour to create a pretty fair comparison test here. A little bit of slow traffic this morning. But I will catch up with you guys here at our halfway turnaround point. We'll tell you what the statistics are in terms of, I guess, efficiency, what the range says is left, and also, how, of course, how far we've traveled. I guess I forgot to mention, it's about exactly a 30-mile loop that I take this back to the house, and then we continue on the exact same path on the second time around, and then basically go until the vehicle dies. So again, exact same test that I've done in every plug-in hybrid vehicle I've tested thus far here on the channel. Okay, so you guys joined me here at the halfway sort of turnaround point while I'll reverse my loop and head back towards the house. Now, what's interesting is I reset the efficiency meter here on the infotainment system right at getting on the interstate. And from getting on the interstate, traveling the whole distance to our turnaround point, we've been averaging 2.5 miles per kilowatt hour. But what's more interesting is we are basically dead on the estimated range that we started out with. So we have 18 miles left on the counter. It says we've traveled 14.4 miles thus far for a total of, 32 and a half or so miles. So I guess it'll be interesting to see if we are able to exceed that 32 number, which again is the highest I've been able to see on that estimated thing, despite this vehicle being rated at 37. So I guess we'll go ahead and not waste too much energy here, head back and see what our efficiency is at the turnaround point. We should have plenty of range to make it back to the house, and then we'll go ahead and repeat the loop once again. I don't absolutely love on the digital cluster that the amount of high voltage battery, the state of charge, is just broken down by roughly like 10 increments and bar graphs. It's very rough of an estimate. I would love to see a percentage indicator, to be honest, along with the fully digital and configurable gauge cluster that's found in some of the newer Lexus products. I know that's a change that they made for 2025 on the RX plug-in hybrid. It got the nicer digital cluster. Hopefully maybe the NX will get the same maybe for 2026, or of course an all-new generation might not be too far off in the distant future. Okay, so we just completed one full loop and I'm heading back out on the second loop, but I have to say, I'd be lying at least a little bit if I wasn't mildly disappointed in the performance thus far. Now, of course, we haven't completed and drained the battery fully to its point where it won't go any farther on only electricity, but at the turnaround point, still have 2.5 miles per kilowatt hour efficiency, which is actually pretty reasonable and pretty good for a plug-in hybrid, you know, really an internal combustion engine vehicle that's designed not for efficiency. And traveled 29.5 miles as I'm reading it right now, and it says 4 miles left on the range indicator. But I will say the battery is hovering right on its crossover changeover point. So if we get those full 4 miles, I guess I'd be a little bit surprised. But we're gonna keep on trucking along here. I will catch you guys, you know, once it reads 2 or 1 miles, go ahead and start recording the dashboard, give you that final number. But it looks like we're gonna fall short of ultimately the 37 miles that this vehicle's rated at. So it looks like we're gonna have enough energy here to at least idle up to this light, sit through the light, and I bet once we start accelerating away from this light, that's ultimately where it's gonna, you know, finally give out. But we're sitting right at teetering on that 33-mile range. So at least we did end up beating the computer just by a little bit. We very well might be calibrating the BMS a little bit, because I'm not sure how often this car is plugged in, fully charged, and fully drained. So we're seeing, I guess, how far we can squeeze out, and we're doing pretty darn good thus far. There it goes, right there. Switched over at 33.9 miles traveled. So interesting result, as you can see from the NX plug-in hybrid. 33.9 is gonna be the final number on our test. And I'm very curious to compare that to how the RX plug-in hybrid did, because I feel like that number very well might be identical to the RX. So I'm gonna have to look back to that video and look back at my notes and see how far that vehicle traveled. But if they are truly identical, that would be very interesting, because like I said, the powertrains could be extremely similar between the two vehicles. But one would think the RX is a little bit bigger, but yes, we do have the aerodynamic drag of the crossbars up top on this one. And the NX isn't, you know, so much smaller that it might make a significant difference, but nonetheless, you think it'd make a difference. And if it turns out that they're both right at 34 miles, that'd be very interesting results. So I have to say, we got some very interesting and peculiar results here from the NX plug-in hybrid, especially when you compare it to that of the RX that I tested last fall. So as you guys just saw, 33.9 miles of all-electric range on the NX plug-in hybrid. And when you compare that to the RX plug-in hybrid, which shares basically the exact same powertrain, I got 36 miles on that vehicle, which means the NX essentially went about 2 miles less on the same amount of electricity from the high voltage battery pack and the electric motor setup. Now, I do want to say we did have the crossbars mounted on the NX, and I think it was a warmer day in the RX, which does affect how the energy flows and, you know, how much you might be able to squeeze out of the battery. But essentially, the NX did no better than that of the RX, and I would assume the RX has a little bit of additional frontal surface area, might be a slightly heavier vehicle. You know, there are some variables on my testing, so I do want to keep all of that in mind. But essentially, the NX did not achieve the window sticker rating, nor did the RX, and in the exact same conditions, the two vehicles might see nearly identical results. So I guess it was a little bit disappointing, I have to say, with the NX to not get at least a little bit closer to what the RX did and or meet the window sticker rating of 37 miles. But yeah, that was basically it as far as my testing. I love the NX. I think it's a very competitive package. I still like the plug-in hybrid powertrain and the way it drives. I think it's got a good amount of power on tap. Of course, it doesn't have to go through the automatic, you know, transmission like that of other vehicles, such as the Volvo CX-70 I've tested, where the electric motor is mounted between the engine and the transmission. And of course, it flows through the transmission, so you feel the vehicle shifting even when using the electric motor by itself. And that setup didn't really have the same performance in terms of straight line speed or just effortless driving than that of the NX. But I have to say that there are other powertrains, including the ones from Volvo, the T8 and the XC60, which, you know, people might cross shop against the Lexus NX. I think that is my preferential plug-in hybrid powertrain, at least from the ones that I have experience with and tested here in my range test videos and just driven on the channel. So I think the NX, again, solid performance, definitely by far not the worst option out there, both in terms of efficiency, total range, and charging. It actually has a very competitive 7 kilowatt level onboard or level 2 onboard charger, which brings the 0 to 100% charge in about 3 hours or just under 3 hours, which is very competitive, better than that of the Volvo, for example. But ultimately won't eke out the best, total usable all electric range versus some of the competition, and does come at a significant price premium from that of the standard NX hybrid or gasoline models. So do keep all of that in mind while considering the NX. It was great to revisit my very first press car after about a year and a half, and I still love the NX. I still think it's a very solid, competent option on the market. It just might not be the best in every single metric, and that might be fine for some people. If it doesn't have the best range, you only need, 15, 20, 25 miles. The NX will most likely do it without a problem, but it's when you try to get, 30, 35, 40 miles, that's when you start to might push the limits of the NX and really what it has to offer, at least from, all electric range standpoint. So I think I'm just going to leave it at that. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video and or found something helpful. If you did, make sure to hit that like button below. Subscribe as always if you haven't. Check out the other videos I've done on both the NX 450h and the NX 350h. Both are solid options. Just depends on, your use case, and ultimately if you're going to be able to plug it in every single time you, park at home or whatever your living situation might be. I would probably stick with the regular hybrid if you can't plug it in on a daily basis, but if you can, it might be worth spending the extra dollar and getting the plug-in hybrid just for the way it drives and the efficiency benefits. But again, it will take a while to recover that unless you're running it on purely electrification or EV all the time and taking advantage of those gas savings. But anyways, let me know your thoughts and opinions on my results and your results if you happen to own the NX plug-in hybrid. Very curious about that. Huge thanks to Lexus for sending the NX 450h for me to test and review, and of course supporting the channel. And as always, I hope to see you guys in the next one.